العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. اللهم لك الحمد أنت أحق أن تحمد، ولك الشكر أنت أحق أن تشكر، وأنت على كل شيء قدير، لك العتبى حتى ترضى، ولا حول ولا قوة لنا إلا بك. اللهم لك الحمد يا ربنا، أنت خالق السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن، ولك الحمد أنت قيوم السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن، ولك الحمد أنت رب السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن. لك الحمد يا ربنا فأنت الحق، ووعدك حق، ولقاؤك حق، وقرآنك حق، والجنة حق، والنار حق. ولك الحمد يا ربنا فمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم حق. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة، وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اهتدى بهديه وعمل بسنته إلى يوم الدين، وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, endless He is in His glory, the creator of heavens and earth, the provider, the cherisher, the sustainer, the bestower of bounties, the source of all good. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that He has granted me and my loved ones, and I express my gratitude to the Lord in words and action, and I say, Alhamdulillah, for blessings I know and blessings I know not. I bear witness that there's no deity worthy of worship save Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger, the bearer of glad tidings, the role model to be followed. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him and his family, his companions and followers, and all the righteous men and women that walk in their footsteps. And I ask Allah to make each and every one of us among them. Allahumma ameen. Ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the descendants of Qusay ibn Kilab, who was technically the founder of Quraysh, the revered and loved man by the Arabs. One of his descendants his name was Abd ad-Dar. Abd ad-Dar ibn Abd ad-Dar ibn Qusay ibn Kilab. And hundreds of years before the Prophet ﷺ came with the message of Islam, the Arabs used to divide up between themselves the honor of being the custodians of the Kaaba in Mecca. One tribe would basically be responsible for feeding the Hajjis. Another tribe would be responsible for providing water to the Hajjis. A third tribe is responsible for taking custody of Dar al-Nadwa, which was the town hall of the city of Mecca in their honor, in which all of their meetings were held. And Abd ad-Dar and his descendants were called Sadanatul Kaaba, meaning they were responsible for carrying the key that unlocks the door of the Kaaba. And it was one of the greatest honors ever bestowed. And for years and years and years, the people of Abd ad-Dar, and by the way, Abd ad-Dar means the worshipper of the house, which is one of the names of Jahiliyyah that we cannot use anymore, because you can only be Abd to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they used those names back in the days of Jahiliyyah, the days of ignorance before Islam. Abd ad-Dar, the worshipper of the Kaaba, or the worshipper of the house, right? One of the descendants of Abd ad-Dar, his name is Uthman ibn Talha. And Uthman ibn Talha was the carrier of the key to the Kaaba at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of those days in Mecca, the Prophet wanted to enter inside the Kaaba with some of the other Hajjis and some of the other pilgrims. And Uthman ibn Talha tells the story later on after he became Muslim after the conquest of Mecca. He tells the story and he says that the Prophet ﷺ wanted to sneak inside the Kaaba with a delegation of the pilgrims. And I gave him a hard time that day. And he said to the Prophet ﷺ, everyone enters except you. You cannot enter. And Rasulullah ﷺ smiled. And he said to Uthman ibn Talha, one of the descendants of Abd al-Dar, he said to him, Ya Uthman, ماذا تفعل إذا رأيت هذا المفتاح في يدي يوما أصنع به ما أشاء. What would you do if the key to the Kaaba ended up in my hands one day and I'd do with it whatever I please? With a big smile on his face, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Uthman told him, قال له هلكت قريش يومئذ وذلت. That'll be the day that destruction and humiliation are brought upon Quraysh. And the Prophet ﷺ smiled and told him, بل عمرت قريش يومئذ وعزت. If that day came, it'll be the day on which Quraysh will be blessed, on which Quraysh will be honored and dignified. Uthman dismissed him and still prevented him from entering the Kaaba, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Years and years and years later, the Muslims came back to the city of Mecca as triumphant conquerors. They took the city bloodlessly from its people. And it is on that day after Bilal said adhan on top of the Kaaba and the idols were destroyed, and the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever enters the house of Abu Sufyan will be safe, and whoever stays around the Kaaba will be safe, and whoever remains in his house or her house will be safe. The Prophet ﷺ finally got a hold of the key to the Kaaba and held it with his own hands. Where was it? It was with his uncle Al-Abbas. The Hashemites, the people of Banu Hashim, they decided to take custody of the key. Now, why not? It's booties of war. We won today. Let's take everything we want. And the Prophet ﷺ took the key from the hands of his uncle Al-Abbas. And he said, this does not belong to you or our family. This belongs to Banu Abd al-Dar. And Al-Abbas told him, Ya Rasulullah, what Abd al-Dar? Give the key back to the people that held it in the days of Jahiliyyah? Give the key back to those who did not even submit to Islam? And he said, yes. And he called Uthman ibn Talha, who had already lost the key. And he said to him, خذ يا عثمان, take the key back. خذوها خالدة تالدة لا يأخذها منكم إلا ظالم. You keep the key with you and your family and your descendants, and only aggressors can take it away from you. It is very interesting because all the way up until the Ottoman Empire in the mid-1800s, it actually stayed in the descendants of Uthman ibn Talha and the people of Abd al-Dar all the way until the Al Sauds put the city of Mecca under siege. And this is history that you can go ahead and read on your own. And when the descendants of Uthman ibn Talha realized that they could get killed in the process of war, they actually left. And they migrated to Yemen. And the Ottomans continued to search for one of the descendants of Uthman ibn Talha until they found a remote branch of the tribe that is called Banu Shaybah. And they handed over the key to a man from Banu Shaybah. His name is Zayn al-Abidin. Until today. The descendants of Banu Shaybah, who are the descendants of Banu Abd al-Dar, who are the descendants of Uthman ibn Talha, still carry the key to the Kaaba until today. In fulfillment of the Prophet's prediction and the prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the key remains in that family pretty much forever. Even the Al Sauds, when they entered the city of Mecca, when they took over in the early years of the 20th century, they could not change that tradition, and they kept the key in that same family. Why do I bring that up today? hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, will be revealed in the course of the khutbah. But I wanted to tell you a story first. It's a friend of mine that just revealed to me recently that he has a recessive trait of sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a disease of the red blood cells. You may become a carrier of sickle cell anemia, but you don't have any symptoms or signs. You're perfectly healthy, but you carry the trait. All it takes is for you to marry someone that also has a recessive trait of sickle cell anemia in order to have children that have sickle cell anemia, and this is a very debilitating disease. So this brother was telling me, I was diagnosed recently with a recessive trait of sickle cell anemia, and he's not married yet, and he said, anytime I think about marriage, I need to actually take my potential spouse and have her go through the testing process to make sure she does not have a hidden trait of sickle cell anemia. He was telling me this in passing in the course of a wider conversation. And it was the first time in my life I thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that my blood is normal. And I said, Alhamdulillah, I never have to worry about this. It never even occurred to me. It never occurred to me to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I don't have sickle cell anemia. I mean, when was the last time you ever, probably most of you didn't even hear of the disease in the first place. And that made me think a lot about how many other blessings that exist in this life that we take for granted and we don't offer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thanks for. They're just there. And we enjoy them every single day. All it takes is for you to see someone who's legally blind to say, Alhamdulillah, for my eyes. And all it takes is to see someone who is mute and deaf to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your ability to speak and your ability to hear. When you see someone that's on a wheelchair who is not able to walk on their own, the first thing that occurs to you is to say what? Alhamdulillah for my legs. Otherwise you would not even think about it. You would not even remember it. Because it is something that you just take for granted and life goes on. It takes deprivation of the ni'mah for us to remember that ni'mah. The blessing has to be taken away from us or someone dear to us in order for us to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of all of those blessings. But the sickle cell anemia story also made me think of something else. It made me realize that it is pure science that genetic traits will be passed on to our subsequent generations. Isn't that true? People who have, blonde hair or blue eye, or people who have curly hair, or people who have a certain skin color or whatever, it is a fact of science that this will be transferred over to your subsequent generations. That is science, that is true. It may not manifest itself immediately in your son or daughter, but the gene will carry itself subsequently into other generations. Even if it doesn't manifest itself in your children, it'll manifest itself and demonstrate itself in your grandchildren. Right? But it is also true that acquired traits are not passed on to other generations. Whatever I learned on my own, acquired on my own, it's not guaranteed that it'll be passed on to other generations. Think of language, for example. When you come to this world, you don't speak any language, and then you learn language through the indoctrination process. Many immigrants today who live in this country, they cannot take it for granted that all kids grow up speaking the language of the old country. Why? Because of the extreme, powerful impact of the surrounding environment. If you don't speak the language at home, the kids are not going to speak the language. Just because mom and dad speak the language doesn't mean the kids are going to speak the language. Doesn't the same apply to faith as well? Many parents think that because they're Muslim, and they grew up Muslim, and they're very religious, and they pray 5 times a day, and they read the Quran, and their hearts are overflowing with love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they do Umrah once a year, and they're so committed to the deen, they automatically think that their kids are just going to turn out to be like this. And that cannot be farther from the truth. Because faith, just like all acquired traits, must be earned through consistent human effort. And if you don't nurture the children to grow up as Muslim, they may not necessarily become Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us a story in the Quran in which He says that He tested Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim passed the test. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to honor Ibrahim and grant him the status of Imam. Not Imam as this Imam, but Imam as a leader, an inspiration of men and for men. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Ibrahim after he passed the test, I will establish you as a leader of men. And as any father would respond, he said, Lord, would you extend that same honor to my children as well? قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. Would you establish that honor and extend it to my children, Lord? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what to him? قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. My covenant is not extended to the wrongdoers. Ya Ibrahim, you've earned it, but your children will have to earn it on their own as well. Ismail cannot earn it. Ishaq cannot have it just because they are your children. Yaqub cannot have it just because he is your grandchild. Yusuf cannot have it just because he is your great-grandchild. They have to earn the honor of my covenant on their own. Being a descendant of Ibrahim, or for all practical purposes, a descendant of Muhammad, whether you are Sayyid or Sharif or whatever we call it this day, is not going to exonerate you before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to earn it on your own, because this is an acquired trait. Now the scholars pose only one exception to that rule. There is an acquired trait that is passed on across generations, from one generation to the other, from parents to children, and from children to grandchildren. The scholars of Islamic spirituality, ilm al-raqa'iq, they talk about one particular acquired trait that should be treated the way we treat genetics. You know what that is? Something that is quite fitting to talk about today, and that is a shukr. Practical gratitude, I call it. Practical gratitude. It's interesting because Thanksgiving was yesterday. And I see that the Muslim community is often divided into two groups when it comes to Thanksgiving or Western holidays in general. There is one group that just embraces it fully, with no scrutiny or cynicism or questioning. They want to live the American life and practice the American way and just Thanksgiving and put a turkey on the table and just have fun, just all kinds of stuff. Spend the day with family and not question anything. Embrace your Americanness to the fullest. And I see another group of Muslims who are just always skeptical and cynical about everything. They keep talking about the history of Thanksgiving and the annihilation and the genocide against Native Americans, and that Thanksgiving is a day of mourning around Native Americans in this country. And I always say a Muslim needs to be balanced. You cannot ignore that there is a very dark history to Thanksgiving in this country. You cannot ignore that the stylized imagery of Native Americans and white Christian men coming together on dinner tables and sharing a meal together, you need to understand that that is a farce of history. Reality was very, very different from that. Reality is that there are tens of millions of natives of this country that were completely wiped out in the name of the white man's burden. But it is also foolish to get caught up in that narrative completely and ignore the simple fact that this entire country is celebrating this simple basic notion, and that is gratitude, which is not something that materialism allows us to do quite often. We have an opportunity to talk about gratitude on this occasion. We cannot ignore that either. A Muslim needs to be balanced. Don't be foolish. Get caught up in Thanksgiving this and Labor Day that without thinking of the history. But at the same time, the flip side of the coin is that don't allow yourself to get caught up in that narrative completely without allowing yourself to take advantage of the opportunity that we can talk about gratitude in a country that does not know any gratitude. We can talk about gratitude in a society that does not give any heed to gratitude. We can talk about gratitude and mention examples from the Quran and the Sunnah that will nurture the heart in a society that does not really appreciate gratitude anymore, because everyone wants more, more, more. And when they get more, they'll want more. So today I wanted to talk to you about one of those acquired traits that should be treated the way we treat genetic traits, and that is ash-shukr. The very simple concept of practical gratitude. And I know that some of you will ask, why do you keep saying practical gratitude? Why not just gratitude? I'll explain that in a minute, inshallah. Practical gratitude. Take, for example, the beautiful story of Musa alayhi salam and Al-Abd al-Salih, the righteous man, in Surah Al-Kahf, that many of you must have read today already. Musa alayhi salam at some point is asked by one of his followers, Man a'lamu ahli al-ard, who is the most knowledgeable of all people on this earth? Musa alayhi salam naturally says, I think I am. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to teach him a lesson that you're not necessarily the most knowledgeable. And he sent him this righteous man in order to show him that knowledge may reside somewhere else. That wisdom may reside somewhere else and not necessarily with you. Al-Abd al-Salih, we also know him as Al-Khadr, right? He showed Musa alayhi salam wonders, right? First they board a ship, and people do them a favor and allow them to get on the ship, but then he pokes a hole in the ship. And he basically destroys the ship. And then, you know, they see this little child playing with other children, and Al-Abd al-Salih, the righteous man, takes his life. And then they go into that little village, and they seek refuge, and they ask for food, they deny them everything. But they saw a fence that was tumbling down, so the righteous man decides to rebuild it. And Musa alayhi salam told him, well, we need to ask them for a compensation, because you just did a job for free. And that's when Al-Abd al-Salih said to Musa alayhi salam, what? قَالَ هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the parting of ways between you and me. That's it. We're done. Ya Musa, I've put up with you. Enough today. We're done. The righteous man explains to Musa alayhi salam the wisdom behind his, very, very stunning and confusing actions. So he explains to him what happened with the tumbling wall. And then he basically says that this tumbling wall belongs to two children, يتيمين في المدينة. وكان تحته كنز لهما. Underneath there's a treasure chest that is hidden. وكان أبوهما صالحا. Their father was a righteous man. فأراد ربك أن يبلغ أشدهما ويستخرج كنزهما رحمة من ربك. The Lord wanted them to reach the age of maturity and then dig out their treasure chest on their own when the assigned time comes. The scholars of tafsir, and I want you to go and take a look at this. The scholars of tafsir actually say that this was not their father, that it was an ancestor of theirs. And that ancestor was known to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he translated his gratitude in acts of generosity and kindness. Everywhere he went, he was giving. He was charitable. He was sharing his wealth with others, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored him by honoring his subsequent generation. Acts of kindness that are a reflection of your gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be rewarded by Allah when He leaves those blessings in your children and their children after them. Our kids may inherit our very curly hair. They may inherit the color of our skin. They will certainly not inherit our language. They will not inherit our leadership skills. They will not inherit our eloquence. If you're a doctor, your children are not going to inherit medical knowledge. But our children will inherit our practical gratitude. What is practical gratitude? Here's two beautiful words in the Arabic language that you need to know. When I thank someone for their great qualities, in Arabic this is called Al-Hamd. And one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hamid. What is Al-Hamid? الذي يحمد لذاته. Someone that is thanked because of the intrinsic beautiful qualities that they possess. Right? That is hamd. So I should be thankful to that I have a good, reliable car. I should be thankful for the jacket that covers my skin. I should be thankful for the weather. I should be thankful for, the family that I have surrounding me. If you are entering the masjid today and someone holds the door for you, what are you supposed to say? Thank you. Now, if tomorrow that person does the same exact thing, what are you supposed to say? Still thank you. If next week that person does the same thing and he holds the door for you, what are you supposed to say? Thank you. Now, if that person does this to you every single day, every single hour, do you think that thank you will be enough? It's not enough anymore. Gratitude at some point needs to translate to action. Saying thank you is one thing. We say Alhamdulillah all the time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you show shukr, which is practical gratitude, I'll explain it in a second, I will increase your wealth. وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. If you show lack of gratitude, my punishment is severe. He didn't say لَئِن حَمَدْتُمْ. Oh, Imam, what are you talking about? I'm thankful to Allah all the time. I say Alhamdulillah hundreds of times every day. Good. But is Alhamdulillah enough? It's not enough. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds the door for you every single second of the day. And at some point you need to translate your gratitude in action. And that is the other word in Arabic, which is the word shukr. That is the subject of today's khutbah. Hamd is when I verbally articulate my gratitude. But shukr is when I articulate my gratitude through action. I want you to think of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala treats us. Okay? So I will basically go through a list of things that we do for Allah and things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for us. Okay? What do we do for Allah? Think about it. Our 5 daily prayers, for those of us who actually pray on a regular basis. How much time does it take? Well, Jum'ah is an exception. How much time does it take? 5 minutes each? 25 minutes a day? If you really give it its fullest and its best with sunnah before and sunnah after, and you really do your tasbih and everything, how much time does it take? 10, 15 minutes each? That's what? An hour a day? I guarantee it. 99% of us don't spend an hour a day praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what? Once in a lifetime, and it's not even required for many of us to perform Hajj? Sure. And then fast 30 days a year? Sure. And then maybe give sadaqah, you put $20 in the box every Jum'ah? Sure. And refrain from haram things that are harmful for us in the first place? Sure. And then what? What do we do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now I want you to look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for you on a daily basis. And again, this is the season of gratitude, right? So let's count our blessings, as they say. The air I breathe. It took smoke filling the air for 3 weeks for us to understand the value of clean air. Isn't that true? And when it started raining a couple of days ago, that's, oh, alhamdulillah, fresh air finally. And we may go on for 3 years. And we never thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for fresh air. One of the brothers was really joking around last week, and he's like, people in California are complaining about the wildfires and all the smoke in the air. They need to live one day in Cairo. This is how people live every single day in the Middle East. In the large cities, this is how people live. This is what they breathe every single day. But when the ni'mah is taken away from us, right, that's all of a sudden we're complaining. And when the ni'mah comes back, we say, alhamdulillah, fresh air. The rain, we thank Allah when it comes. The pleasant, mild weather. The food that we eat. The water that we drink. The shelter that covers our heads. The clothes that cover our skin. Employment, security, car, house. The ability to travel. The ability to see beautiful landscape. The trees, the rivers, the mountains, the beautiful clouds, the blue sky, the star constellations, children, friends, family. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this community of ours, for the masjid, for our brothers and sisters. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for things that we know and things that we may not even think about. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. You can try to count the blessings of Allah, but you will run out of numbers before you even reach the bottom of the list. And on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you for like literally about an hour and a half worth of effort every day. He rewards you with جَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ. Jannah that is as large as the heavens and the earth. And in Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He will give you more. لَهُمْ مَا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. Everything you desire you will have, and I have more. This is the meaning of shukr, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses His love to us in action. So next time ask yourself, I have a lot of blessings in my life. Alhamdulillah for everything. But it shouldn't stop at saying Alhamdulillah. I have to find a practical way to show my gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. What can I do to show Allah that I'm grateful? Should I volunteer in my community? Should I give more of my wealth? Should I help at the soup kitchen? Should I see an organization in the community that is helping with the refugees and try to help out with the refugees? What can I do to help? What can I do to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in practical ways? What can I do to show Allah that I deserve His ni'mah? Because He says, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. I don't want to be ungrateful, because if I'm ungrateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take the ni'mah away from me. That's subhanAllah. It's a basic lesson that we teach the little children. Habibi, you have to be thankful, and you have to say thank you to Allah, and you have to use it right, because those who are ungrateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take it away from their hands. We say that to our children, but I think that sometimes we fail to say that to ourselves. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to accept our good deeds, to increase His blessings upon us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the strength to be grateful for the blessings that He has given us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us closer to each other as a community. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands and speak to Allah Azza wa Jal from the heart. Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinun bil ijab. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك أرحم الراحمين اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, just a quick reminder today, as everyone around us is talking about gratitude, I figured we need to talk about gratitude in a way that is compatible with our own Islamic teachings. A spiritual reminder for us to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in practical ways. And I said that of all the acquired traits that must be earned, the scholars have taught us that when we are grateful to Allah in a practical way that is reflected in our act of kindness and generosity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow our children and their children after them to acquire that same trait from us. It becomes an heirloom legacy that is handed over from one generation to the other. So if you're grateful, it is very likely that your kids will become grateful, and that their children will become grateful, and your descendants will become grateful. And I wanted to go back to Uthman ibn Talha, because this is how I started. There was a woman by the name of Hind bint Abi Umayyah al-Makhzumi. She was the daughter of a great, generous, honorable man of the Arabs from the days before Islam. His name is Abu Umayyah al-Makhzumi. He was so generous and grateful to the Lord that they used to call him Zadul Rakb. He was the sustenance of the traveler, because he took it upon himself. Every time he traveled, he would basically sponsor as many travelers with him as possible, provide them with food and things. His daughter, Hind, was married to a man by the name of Abu Salama. And they both had a baby together. Naturally, his name was Salama. They were some of the earliest people that accepted Islam. They migrated to Abyssinia with Hijrat al-Habasha, with one of the earlier migrations, and then they came back to Mecca to more persecution. When it was time for the Muslims to migrate to Medina, they both wanted to migrate with the Prophet ﷺ with their son Salama. But his family and her family would not allow them. Her husband's family took Salama and they said, "You're not leaving with our grandchild." So Abu Salama took her permission and he said, "Would you please just allow me? I want to be with the Prophet ﷺ. I want to be with Rasulullah." And he left his wife in Mecca and he traveled all the way by himself to Medina to be with the Messenger ﷺ, driven by his love and loyalty to the Messenger ﷺ. Now Salama lost her husband and she lost her son. So every single day she would go and sit on a rock somewhere to watch the sunset and cry and weep, until a man of her family saw her and he took mercy on her and he interceded and he said to the two families, "Come on, have some mercy on this lady. Give her son back. Let her do whatever she wants to do." 1 full year after Hijrah, the family of her husband finally gave her Salama. And Salama took Salama and got on a camel in order to travel all the way to Medina to catch up with the Prophet ﷺ and her husband. A treacherous journey of a few days, a woman with her child by themselves. And on the outskirts of Medina, who intercepted her? A man from Banu Abdullah, his name is Uthman ibn Talha, the carrier of the key to the Kaaba. And he told her, "Ila ayna yabnati Zad al-Rakb?" Where are you headed, daughter of Zad al-Rakb? And she said to him, "I'm migrating to be with my husband and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam." Mind you, brothers and sisters, Uthman was not even Muslim. And he said to her, "It would be dishonorable for you to travel by yourself. And it would be dishonorable for me to let you travel by yourself. You know what? I will give you company. And I will take care of you." And he held the rope with a camel and he walked with her on foot all the way to the city of Medina. And she describes later and she says, "I have never seen in my life a man with the honor and dignity, with a man of the gratitude and the generosity of Uthman ibn Talha." Subhanallah. She arrived in Medina, she is united with her husband, but subhanallah, a year later, Abu Salama was injured in the Battle of Uhud and he died. And all the companions knew her maqam, her status and standing as a Muslim woman. And they wanted to marry her. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq proposed and she said no. Umar ibn al-Khattab proposed and she said no. And she was waiting and waiting and waiting for the right opportunity. When her husband had died, the Prophet ﷺ taught her a hadith. A hadith that we say when we are struck by calamity. Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa akhlif li khayran minha. Lord, be with me as I struggle with this calamity. And replace the thing that was taken away from me, replace it with something better. Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa akhlif li khayran minha. She kept saying that dua every single day until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered her prayers and replaced that which he had taken from her with something better when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam proposed to her. And Hind bint Abi Umayya al-Makhzumiyya became al-Mu'mineen, Salama radiyallahu anha. I want you to examine the story. She is a daughter of someone who used to be honorable and generous and grateful to God, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted her the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Uthman ibn Talha, the one who helped her, is the one that was honored later after the conquest of Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ wanted to reward him for taking care of Salama, and he gave him the key to the Kaaba back, and he said that key stays with you and your family and your descendants until the day of judgment, and that remains to be the case. When you show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acts of kindness and acts of gratitude and acts of generosity that are practical and not just lip service, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep that blessing and that barakah in your children and their children after them. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to accept our good deeds, to forgive us our sins, to establish us with firmness on His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us closer to each other as brothers and sisters, to unify our hearts to serve our community. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us overcome our disagreements, to benefit our deen, dunya and akhirah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to cleanse our hearts from hatred, from the love of this dunya. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rid our hearts of jealousy and envy. And I ask Allah to replace that with compassion, love and empathy. Allahumma ameen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a sense of gratitude that will be practical, that will be extended to our children and their children after them, that will become preservation and protection for them from the illnesses and the evils of their surrounding environment. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to strengthen our brotherhood and sisterhood and to establish us with strength on His path in the life of this world. I ask Allah to erect the Muslim community as a community of righteousness that stands as a role model to be followed by others, to inspire others. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to make each and every one of us a catalyst of good and an inspiration of healing in the lives of others. And as He gathered us here in this shape and form, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gather all of us in the highest level of His Jannah. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma laka alhamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhika wa 'azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. تقبل منا يا ربنا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم يا ربنا اجعلنا ممن يتبعون محمدا في هذه الدنيا ما بقينا أبدا. اللهم يا ربنا لا تفرق بيننا وبينه حتى تدخلنا مدخله. اللهم وحينا على سنته وأمتنا على ملته واحشرنا تحت زمرته وادخلنا الجنة في لوائه. اللهم وأوردنا حوضه واسقنا من يده الشريفة شربة هنيئة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في المشارق والمغارب يا رب العالمين. اللهم أبدلهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونك لا يشركون بك شيئا. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.